reality is the vast majority of the tradition as it's been documented is composed of verbal aspects, and those verbal aspects are definitely German language sources that have been passed down, usually by oral tradition, but are often written down as well, sometimes by the individuals who use them, but then in other cases later on by academics, folklorists, and other people who are preserving or studying the subject. Typically what you're going to find among local people, though, when they are learning these traditions, they're going to be learning them by word of mouth. They're going to be passed down usually from a woman to a man and from a man to a woman. And this is a really interesting thing about this protocol, because we don't know all the reasons why this may have developed. But the reality of it is that the results are that it creates the opportunity for there to be equal numbers of men and women engaging in these practices within the Pennsylvania Dutch community. I would argue that the Pennsylvania Dutch may not have necessarily had equality between men and women, but what you will find is that there is certain amounts of emphasis placed on both. And in Pennsylvania Dutch culture, and I think these healing traditions are in keeping with this, in Pennsylvania Dutch culture, you find that there are domains. And so oftentimes the men's domain specifically deals with the fields and the livestock. But of course, there's always an exception to that. What you're going to find for the women is that it's oftentimes the dairy, it's often the garden, it's often the truck patch garden, and it's the house. And so there are these domains. But the reality is what you're going to find is that obviously it takes multiple people to run a farm, and not just a man or a woman, but an entire network of people. So what's really fascinating about this is that you can see some of these factors at play in the culture as well, in terms of the idea that a woman must teach a man and a man must teach a woman. It implies that people have to be able to work together, because if they can't work together, they're not going to be effective at using these healing traditions for one another. There also are ancient traditions as well. Ancient Teutonic sources suggest that men taught women and women taught men, and that was a source that was documented by Jacob Grimm in the 1870s, and suggests that this may also have an ancient component to it as well, that even predates the idea of Christianity. So some of the interesting components of this is that you'll see that Pennsylvania Dutch tradition comes from a wide variety of sources. There are components of it that are in Pennsylvania Dutch language, components of it that are in Standard German, or basically what would have been the Standard German of the day for the 19th century and 18th century. And then also some things that are in Latin, some things that are also in English. So we have a tradition that people have been making use of for quite some time in a variety of different ways. I know of practitioners today who work primarily in English. I also know people who are going to be working primarily in German or in Pennsylvania Dutch. So what you're going to find is a variety of ways that individuals have kind of internalized and adapted to meet the needs of present day people who are, for the most part, in this immediate area, not using Pennsylvania Dutch as everyday speech of the home and of the farm anymore. Although there are still roughly 40,000 people who are speaking the language who are not Amish or Mennonite. Among the Amish and Mennonites, there's 450 to 500,000 in North America. So this is a really important thing to be aware of, that the language is still active, and with the language also comes some pretty serious insights into looking at these traditions and understanding them.